Let's play a game, shall we? A game of connect the dots. Allow me to enlighten you.
About 3 years ago, I started looking at something that had been brought to my attention by several people, and it was basically the fact that there was huge, not millions of dollars, but billions of dollars, and even trillions of dollars with a T, disappearing out of the federal budgets. So we're talking much more money than I was used to chasing. We used to chase in these variety of corrupted operations. You chase a million or 10 or even $20 million, trying to track that down. When they would, it would show up, let's say, disappeared out of a budget.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T.
Now, the amount we're talking about now, by the way, 2.3 trillion is the equivalent to writing a check to every man, woman, and child in the United States of America for about $5,000. That's how much 2.3 trillion is. And Donald Rumsfeld, very calmly sat before the Congress and said that that money was missing. They didn't quite know where it was, coming out of defense budgets. Well, the senators and the congressmen, of course, were set back on that. You know, I mean, they're, like I say, they're used to stealing a few million here and there. But when you start talking that kind of money, that's pretty serious.
Because this is what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. Every so often, Rumsfeld comes out and goes, I don't know where. I don't know when. But something awful is going to happen.
And while we're in this little interlude here, let me just also add to the Rumsfeld saga that he is the reason that aspartame is in our foods.
Appeared into the smoke of the Twin Towers building in New York City. So the announcement was rather well timed because it just vanished. So following that, some folks had brought, of course, to my attention the fact that Mr. Ron Paul in the Washington, D.C. had come forward and had asked the Federal Reserve System if he could get an audit on the gold, because the gold out of Fort Knox has been rumored to be gone. It is gone. There is no gold in Fort Knox any longer. And when Ron Paul came forward on the floor of the Congress, the Senate, he asked for have an audit of the gold to make sure that it is all still there, and they told him to simply go away.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Because the Congress and the Senate has no right to even look into the Federal Reserve operations. They cannot request. We cannot request through the Senate or the Congress an actual legitimate audit of all the Federal Reserve gold that supposedly is in Fort Knox. Now, what also happened within a few months, of course, we got to remember back 2010, that period of time, 2008, was when the world banks were in a serious financial crisis. You had Greece, and several of these countries are actually on the border of bankruptcy. And the Federal Reserve in America had to lend them money and put money into bolster up the international banking finance, or it was all going to crash. And that was back around 2010, around that period of time. Now, at that time, Germany and several other nations had come forward and had asked the Federal Reserve the same thing that Ron Paul had asked, and that was, we need an audit because the foreign banks, a lot of people, if you're not into this, you would not know it, the foreign banks around the world for many years have put billions and billions of dollars of gold bullion from their different nations around Europe and around the world, South America, etc. They had deposited tons of gold in the Federal Reserve. When Germany and 6 or 8 other nations came forward in about 2013, 2011, that period of time, they came forward and they said, we need to take some of our gold out of Fort Knox and put it back into our own reserves here so we can stabilize our financial condition.
Wait, what? So do we understand that correctly to mean that it wasn't just our gold that was at Fort Knox? And now it's not? Where do you reckon it went? Magic tricks abound. Building number 7, anyone?
Guess what happened? The Federal Reserve System told those countries that they could not have any gold out of Fort Knox. And the best that they could do for those countries was to give them an audit of the gold, but that would not be until 2020. So,
19 years later. 19. Yeah.
really red flag for me. I thought, wait a minute, something really is rotten in Denmark. We have all this money disappearing from standard legitimate funding out of Washington, just vanishing. And then we have the gold at Fort Knox is gone. I mean, it's gone. If it was there, they would show it to the appropriate people, and they're just not doing that. You know, when you're talking about trillions of dollars vanishing, and then you look at the rest of the scene, for example, changes that had taken place for 20 years with the space program being very, very different from what it originally was, and the expansion of what they called continuity of government within the United States, and the fact that they were arming the police departments with military weapons all over the United States, it started to really bother me. It was a matter of what is going on? What is it that would cause these guys who usually steal what they want to, cover it up, and build them a new home in Tahiti or something for vacations and get away with it? But now they've changed direction. Then I remembered in the 90s, I had several people contact me, and they said, Bob, I have films of the construction of underground facilities all over the United States.
Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of 17 to 19 billion dollars.
And that came to me from several people. Some of them were truck drivers who told me fantastic stories about having an 18-wheeler.
I just want to pause it on that map for a moment. You see this green dot in the center of Indiana? That's Indianapolis. There's a tunnel that goes from Indianapolis to Ohio and Indianapolis to Illinois. From our subway station that is no longer in use and is now guarded by armed guards at the doors with great big chains and padlocks on them inside of Union Station. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems quite suspicious to me. I'm sure several of you that listen to my programs, my podcasts, also know about all of these dumbs and how several very shallow earthquakes have been occurring for the past few years to try to close those off for various reasons. But they're used for more than one reason. They're multifunctional. I also know that down here where this dot is where some FEMA semis were witnessed bringing supplies into a now abandoned cave system that they have commandeered and built steel walls, steel doors, and sealed off for no one to have access to them any further, where the local kids, teenagers, young adults, used to be able to go spelunking. No longer accessible, and was witnessed and reported by a local Crawford County sheriff, as a matter of fact. Interesting dots to connect, don't you think?
40-foot truck filled with foodstuffs being delivered into a government facility, and they would follow the map where they were supposed to go, and there was nothing out there. Let's say it was outside of Texas in the desert area, and they would go, and the side of a mountain would open up, and they would drive down inside of a mountain, and it would close behind them. Now, those are fantastic stories, but to me, back in the 90s, they were just that. To myself, that was almost an outrageous kind of a story. They would tell me about going into an underground facility in Tennessee and driving for 600 miles under the ground. Those things were a little mind-boggling and pretty
600 miles,
fanciful type of a report for me. So I kind of put it on the back shelf. These people sent me pictures, and they sent me.
And I can't remember, and I hope he's going to show some visuals on this in this video. I can't remember if he does or not, but there are also like, I forget what you call them, but they're like super speedy trains, underground trains that are now in those old subway stations that are no longer used. And several people have reported on those and talked about them, but nobody really has ever been able to wrap their mind around, are they real? How do they function? Where are they at? But what if that's what they've done with places like Union Station?
Sent me what were video VHS videos at that time, but I didn't know what to make of them. It didn't mean anything, so I sort of put it on the side burner, so to speak, the back burner. But again, now this is about 3 years ago, I started putting all of the dots to connected all of the
There's
dots.
some of those big steel doors.
And what had taken place in approximately
I see rail
83,
tracks.
apparently with the launching of a new infrared telescope being put way out in the far reaches of the solar system. Apparently, Planet X, or the planet called Nibiru, which is mentioned in all the biblical writings. It's mentioned in all Bibles and scriptures from many foreign nations. It's mentioned in historic writings of the Chinese emperor 2,000 years ago. It's written on the side of the walls of temples that were 4,000 years old. There was a study.
It is known by many names. Herculebus, Wormwood, Nibiru, the Destroyer, the Harbinger, the Phoenix, but all one same topic. Binary star with its own mini solar system.
Study done a while back of the
Comets
clay
included.
tablets that were from Sumeria that had been completely broken down and analyzed by a man named Sitchin, Sitchin, and he had deciphered clay tablets. There's 25,000 of these tablets. They actually went back 4,000 years, and they
25,000.
described Nibiru, the planet X, and its relationship to coming back like Halley's Comet, coming back and going around the sun every once in a while, and then going way back out again in orbit, way out past Pluto, and coming back again in a couple thousand years. And this coincided with the biblical talk. It was called wormwood in the Bible, and it's described in, like I said, a whole multiple of biblical scriptures of sorts coming from around the globe. 2,000, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, in the case of the Sumerian clay tablets. So what they described is Nibiru being a planet in a huge elliptical orbit, similar to that. Like I say, I compare it to Halley's Comet that comes by every 75 years. There's another comet that we recently discovered that came around in 1997. That was called the Hale-Bopp Comet. It is similar to Halley's Comet, except that the orbit that the Hale-Bopp Comet is in has been calculated to be 4,200 years. Now that's 600 to 800 years longer than the proposed orbit of Nibiru, or Planet X. So originally I thought, wow, you talk about 3,000 year, 3,600 year orbit of a planet. That's really amazingly large. I thought almost that was ridiculous. But once I realized and got into it and found out that we did have the Hale-Bopp Comet of 4,000 years, well, then that took my excuse, looking like it was a crazy number, that just erased that. So I started studying the people that really have been into studying the planet X or Nibiru for many, many lifetimes, or a long time, or following up on other people's studies. And there's several people that have spent their entire last 30 or 40 years just studying the astronomical potential of Planet X. Now, and get back to where I was, in 1983, apparently it was discovered sufficiently that scientific people at a very high level came into President Reagan and George Bush, the vice president, and said, we got a problem. It looks like now we found Planet X that's been talked about, like you mentioned earlier at the beginning. It's been talked about at least, and written about, of course, going way back, but been in modern times, in 1960 and 50, there was writings about it in Life magazine and Reader's Digest and Lookton magazine, all the major media of that time in the 50s and the 60s. But apparently around 83, Ronald Reagan and his people were told that this is on its way back in and that it had been discovered, and now what are we going to do? All right? So at that point, it changed everything in Washington. And what you had now...
And they publicly told they saw it again in 94 and again around 04. And every time they saw it, they were mind blown by how much closer and larger It was.
Had now was this handful of large numbers of, I'm going to refer to them all as, excuse me, criminal, corrupted persons out of government, and they decided that what we have to do, obviously, is if this thing's coming back, we've got to expand underground facilities that are going to hold enough people so that our families and our immediate, most important, wealthy people of the United States are going to have.
That's the continuity of government that he speaks of. And I just want to remind you once again that NORAD Command Center is in Cheyenne Mountain. And they have been there since 2019, when our very first temporary 2-week lockdown took place. And our lockdowns are over. Our pandemic is over. So why haven't they came out yet?
Going to have a place to hide. They called it continuity of government. And they built 103 of these underground facilities underground in the United States. When I started investigating, I ended up being able to get plenty of information on them, including most of the locations. Additionally, we have live footage and photographs of the underground facilities. Again, not all of them. Most of them, of course, are secret to above top secret in their classification. I also started looking into it to find out what
There
the
it is.
status was on.
That's the super fast train I was talking about. You can go forward or backwards. And you can literally get like all the way across the United States in 20 minutes. It's super crazy fast.
Other foreign nations, because something of this sort coming back, a biblical event that will devastate the globe, obviously has to be known also to the highest levels of other governments. What I found out is that Russia in 2010 put out a mandate that by 2015 that they would have 5,000 underground facilities prepared for as many people as they could in Russia. I found out they had one large facility. Actually, they have several large, but one of them's big enough to hold as many as 30,000 or 40,000 people underground. I discovered that the European major nations have been also building underground facilities. And then I also...
Now, I just want to say, if you want to trust the powers that be that have built the tunnel systems to save you from impending danger, by all means, be my guest. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm here to show you how to think. They don't want you to know you can save yourself. They don't want you to know who you are. They would rather you're at their mercy, because then they have better control. Is that a nefarious thing or a positive thing? I guess that all depends on perspective. My personal take on it, I did what Jesus said, and I learned to know myself. And that's who I will trust. That's who I will turn to save me. And that's who I will be to save as many others as I possibly can. No mercy. No fear.
I also discovered, which anybody can look up because it is part of public information in general, you can look up what's called the Seed Vault of Norway or Denmark. They have built a
Our
giant
brand new Noah's
international
Ark.
cooperative seed vault, maintains billions of.
Ever wondered why you can't buy heirloom seeds anymore? This is why. Again, is it nefarious? Or is it a positive? Depends on perspective.
Of seeds in the to be hidden away. It's underground in the side of a mountain. You can look it up on a computer. Just put International Seed Vault and you can find it yourself on the computer. This is a storage facility maintaining all of the necessary seeds to reseed the globe, the entire face of the earth, or as much as they want or can, after the complete
Yes, they thought Norway was a safe place.
Similar to the original floods of Noah, which is what Nibiru, Planet X, will potentially bring upon the globe when it comes close to the earth. All right, it's been researched sufficiently that the Planet X has come around several times in the past. Now, and when it has happened, it has varied in the degree of devastation, and this is documented geologically, etc. Here's the basics of what is described to most likely take place, and this relates to the scriptures, and I'm calling it that because it's just written word, not only biblical, but of all other ancient scribes that have put all this down in black and white, so to speak, going back many years, when they have actually.
This is exactly the type of images that I was shown in my very extreme vision in 2004, when the voice said to me very loudly to be prepared. Naturally, instinctively, I thought that meant to be a prepper. As I continued to absorb this information that I was shown, downloaded, however you want to look at it, I began to understand that I needed to prepare spiritually first and foremost, and truly know thyself. And then to prepare mentally and physically, and to test the hypothesis of what I was learning to make sure that I could use it and teach it. And I have done just that. We are who we've been waiting for. And there's a reason that there are so many volunteers, starseeds, indigos, light workers, earth angels here amongst us right now.
Actually, some of the people that had survived the previous passes and wrote about it and inscribed it in clay
and wrote about it.
And did
Why?
it in bronze castings and things of that sort.
How did they survive when others couldn't or didn't? Was it because of the type of era they were in? Were they in an age that was a dark age rather than an age that was a golden age, which is where we are now, coming into the golden age, the age of Aquarius? This is our moment. This is our time to shine. This is our chance to change history for good.
Describing what took place. And of course, they didn't understand what it was, but they described it exactly as it most likely will happen again. Now, here's where it fits into wormwood and the meteor falling into the water and all of that. That's all obviously written in reasonably plain words in the Bible, so to speak. You don't have to draw too many wild conclusions about what's being described as things splashing into the ocean, etc., and causing great tidal waves, by the way. Tidal waves are going to be unbelievable, tsunamis when this comes around. But it will also be, part of that will be like Noah's flood, and it will be this planet, which is 5 times, calculated to be 5 times the size of Earth, will have a gravitational effect on the Earth that hasn't been seen since it came by the last time. Now, here's what basically will take place. When it comes back around, it will come in, and this is even according to Gil Broussard's wonderful work that he's done. It will come in and circle around the sun. It will go behind the sun. It is a solid mass 5 times the size of Earth. It will cause an eclipse of the sun for a period of time. It has
What's that?
3 or 4 planets that are actually, I'm going to refer to them.
Hold on. You need to really pay attention to this part. Don't we have an eclipse coming in April? Listen.
Wonderful work that he's done. It will come in and circle around the sun. It will go behind the sun. It is a solid mass 5 times the size of Earth. It will cause an eclipse of the sun for a period of time. It has 3 or 4 planets that are actually, I'm going to refer to them as moons, that travel with it and travel around it, similar to
a total eclipse of the sun, April 8th, that lasts 4 minutes and some odd seconds, which is hella longer than normal eclipses. And we've already been told, oh, we're going to see Mercury in the sky too, in broad daylight. And, 2 days later, well, we're going to see Mercury and Venus, it turns out. And then 2 days after that, we're going to see Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter all in the sky, in daytime sky. Don't be alarmed by seeing 3 planetary bodies out there during the eclipse. Don't be scared of that, folks. Don't worry about that. Don't think about that. It's just Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury. And then 2 days after that, they literally said, oh, and by the way, there's 2 smaller moons that are called satellites that are orbiting around our planet once in a while. We don't see them very often either, but we're going to see those in the daytime sky too during the eclipse. Mark your calendars, folks. April 8th is the beginning of the change of the world as we know it. For better or for worse. All in perspective. It's all in your thoughts and your beliefs. What do you think? What do you believe? Leave it in the comments. Let's talk about it.
to the situation with our moon relative to Earth. The moons will be dragged around with Nibiru at the same time, and then we will have a tail of debris being dragged along, gravitationally sucked along behind this original, the primary planet Nibiru. When it comes by, it will travel behind the sun. The Earth, on its regular rotation around the sun, will in fact pass through the tail of Nibiru. When it does that, you will have the equivalent of the biblical meteorites that fell upon the earth in hail and brimstone. They didn't know how to describe it, but basically we're going to have flaming meteors of different sizes, meteorites crashing. Actually, we will be crashing through that debris. It will take about an hour travel time to pass through it. Then bearing in mind now the Nibiru would be ahead of the Earth, going around the sun, and it will take about 155 days for Nibiru to come out the other side and head back towards outer space once again, not to come back for some unknown period of time. Now,
Now, do you know what else they're saying about this comet that's coming? Number one, it's going to have wings. Number two, it's going to have a very long tail that's several thousands of miles long that they had not expected and have never seen before. Third, it's coming in a spiral. What else? Oh, yeah. All of the ancient writings that talk about Nibiru or wormwood or whatever you want to call it, they always depict it with wings and a long tail. And seems like to me, I think it was the Chinese people who call it the dragon. Huh. And as irony has it, this is even the year of the dragon.
now there's a debate between 2 or 3 different groups of people that have been studying this, and that's okay, because it
The
doesn't
red star Kachina.
affect the bottom line on this. The debate is whether it comes around in 3,005 or 3,600 years, or if it comes around 350 years, which is closer to the figure that Gil Broussard believes in, doing his studies. And he has very good information to back that potentially up in terms of the numbers of years. All right, so here's what I'm saying, where it doesn't make any difference to you and I,
is that we're getting ready to see this.
In our lifetime,
live it,
then
experience
we're
it,
talking, it doesn't make any difference.
and
If it's
defeat
been
it.
out for 3,000 years, or if it has come around 10 times 3, 10 times 300, which would be 3,000 years, and coming around 10 times since that same period of time. So in other words, it doesn't make any difference if it's 3,000 or if it's coming around every 300 and 350 years. It does not make any difference, because if it comes during our lifetime, we are the ones that will have to face whatever it will bring with it. And the meteorites, those things where the biblical students talk about that being what is written of in the wormwood, I believe what it is in reality, it is Nibiru itself is the wormwood, and all of the debris that will hit Earth when we go through the tail of that thing. Actually, we will plunge through the tail, and it will take whatever. I think it's about 1 hour going through the tail itself. It's actually mathematically been analyzed. That will bring with it, you see,
I don't know
that
about
will
that
bring
whole
with
1
it
hour
a
thing.
multitude of meteors, etc. And I must say this,
That's not in my
we already
information.
have an increase and a multitude of effects today from
That's
Nibiru.
true.
Now, when we talk about the effects of Nibiru, see,
It's already been affecting us for years and just amping up. And look how much has drastically changed already in our few months of 2024.
the problem is going to be, it's a multitude of effects on the Earth. You know, unless you really get into studying the planets, etc., and become astronomically educated, which I don't pretend to be. I'm the messenger relative to that information put together by 1,000 astronomers and scientists over a couple thousand years. The amount of information that has been generated from many, many people studying this brings it down to where we can do a rough calculation as to when Nibiru may pass through close by once again. Now, it's been calculated related to all of the information put together, put into a computer and kicking out the analysis of the most likely time for its return, the second least likely time, and then the third very least likely time to be passing back by. Now, this is going to upset some people. The possibility is very high, according to Gil Broussard and many other people, and the relationship to when it has been passing previously is that it will be seen in December, and it will take several months for it to come close enough to go around the sun. But it will be seen in December of this year. And then we will have January, February,
Last year.
and then the key months for it to be closest to pass near the Earth and causing the most trouble would be March and April of next year. And then it will head back out, and whatever damage it's done will be finished, and we'll be licking our wounds. If it is not seen, and what I'm talking about seeing is where it's up there and it looks like a new star up there in the sky coming inward, it will be getting bigger every month, every week, a little bit bigger. It will look like a single star originally, even though there's probably a couple of moons going around with it and a lot of space junk. It'll be seen in December. It'll get bigger in January, February, and then March and April, make its journey around the sun and back out. The journey around the sun and back out is probably 155 days. Now, all of the best scriptures and information related to when it had passed before and was written in, logged in, and drawn, sketched out, and all the rest of that, it has always been apparently in March and April, like the Passover period of time. All right. If in fact we don't see it this December, and with it coming in, then we probably have a complete year to wait for it to come. If it still has not arrived in that second year from today, if it's still not on its way in, then we would be into 3 years of March. Okay, in other words, March or April, 3 years from now. But the consensus is that it's very likely to be seen this December and to pass in the March of April of next year. All right. Now, it's not my estimate. That's an estimate of other people that are I consider to be the experts. Now, here's something else that's very important. This is where the politics fits into this thing. The people that are keeping this secret from us, all right? A lot of people say, when will they tell us this is coming? They will never formally announce that this is coming in. If you told...
And for good reason.
Leaders of any of the major nations came out and told the world that this thing is going to be coming in 5 months or 2 months or 6 months, that this thing was going to be coming by, it would be the end of all things. The financing would be, the entire globe would go into riots. So it's not going to be announced.
No grocery stores.
They will never tell us. And unfortunately,
no gas.
It looks like it may be within 3 years. It literally is the most important report that I have ever done. And I have done reports at the request of the Senate Intelligence Committees. I have done reports directly for dictator Manuel Noriega's lawyers. I have done reports for congressional and Senate investigations for 25 years, and I would never do this as a frivolous bunch of baloney. I am absolutely a complete, firm believer in what I have completed here.
As am I. And the only importance to me in you believing it is so that you can learn to know yourself, so that you can learn to help yourself and truly help others. Yeah. That's it in a nutshell. Until next time, be well and be blessed in love and light. Good night.